tell us a little bit about how you got to where you're at as a carnivore doctor.
Wow, such an interesting, long, twisted journey to get here, but I think everybody's is. I mean, nobody has a straight path, and I feel that to coin a term, I believe it was from Christy Code Red, you have to have a why that makes you cry, because nobody really starts digging down and researching and trying to figure out the optimal human diet, right? Just haphazardly in their spare time for fun, you know? It's because you have a motivation. And then I'll go to Charles Washington's famous saying, it's the lucky ones who get fat, because those are the ones that are typically early on at a younger age driven to try to figure this whole thing out. Now, whether it's from just metabolic disorder from diabetes, or whether it's true, carb, sugar, eating disorder, binge addiction, which I suffered from for so long. So I'll segue into answering your question there. I had such a long history of struggling with my weight, and my parents are obese and diabetic. My brother's obese and diabetic. I was husky, chunky as a kid, and it developed into eating disorders, and it was totally so removed from my mind that I actually had a serious problem with this, like an addiction, that it was truly something that I was trying to control and I couldn't control it, and I couldn't figure out why. So I kept hunting, seeking, searching the answer. And thankfully at the point where the internet came about, and I was, still, then I found, there was the Atkins, and then there was paleo, and I read a book, Schwarzbein Principle, which basically said to get rid of sugar and flour. And all these were steps in the right direction, but still were not eradicating my horrible, overwhelming problem. So yeah, it was through finding a tiny little forum, zeroing in on health, and they were a small group of zero carbers, meaning eating carnivore, but back then we called it zero carb. And they were a small group over on Living Low Carb Vita, Jimmy Moore's. He had a pretty big low carb community forum, and they started a thread, and the thread kept growing. And I believe the story is he booted them off because it wasn't the standard of the message there. And yeah, I came across the group, and there was so many people in there. Well, at the time it seemed so many, but it was like 100 people. I was like, wow, look at all these people, like, and what are they doing? And luckily for me, there was 2 women on there, and everybody kept individual journals, and they spoke openly about their food addiction and binge eating, and how this has resolved their eating disorder. And I was like, I was all ears at that point. And I jumped in March 9th, 2009. I said, all right, let's go for it. I'm going to just keep researching, as I am my own N=1 experiment with it. And the longer I did it, the more I realized, I was like, wow, this is really powerful. There's something to this. Plus, staying in there and reading people resolving their arthritis, their diabetes, their anxiety, their bipolar. It was just on and on and on of who was resolving what malady. And then I thought, wow, what the heck? We're told the opposite. We're told to eat tons of fruits and vegetables, eat lean meat. If anything, go meatless Monday. And the whole agenda was the opposite of what I was now focusing on. And it became very difficult when, and I'm sure anybody who's kind of into this is getting this, is that, what about your heart? What about your cholesterol? My doctor's insisting I go on a statin. Well, and it's like, it's so difficult. There's so much noise and so much opposite information, all the way to slather on sunscreen every day. You don't want to get skin cancer, right? I do the opposite. I don't come within 10 feet of a bottle of Coppertone. Okay. I don't even want to be close to somebody on the beach spraying it and be downwind of them when I smell the chemical and think that it's getting on my skin. And it's like, and then it became like, I don't want to say it became like a joke, but I was like, I actually do have to do the opposite of what I'm being told. So that's kind of my path into this, because I know some people who will come onto my Instagram and they're curious because I don't, it's not like a set thing that I'm out there saying all the time, but I do in every interview, I talk about how I got here, because it doesn't matter how I got here or how you got here, or, if it's somebody trying to resolve infertility issues, somebody trying to resolve Hashimoto's, somebody who's got depression and anxiety. It doesn't matter. All it matters is that we come together as a community and we start putting out the information, the science behind it. Yeah, there's no science as far as a specific study, because I tell people, they go, well, show me the science. Well, you know what? It costs millions of dollars to do an appropriate study. And you can't possibly, diet related studies are almost impossible. You would have to actually isolate people for a long period of time, because nobody remembers exactly what they ate. And nobody is so steadfast because they're in a study that they're not going to go off plan. You cannot do an appropriate study. So here's the study, me and you, and now
Mhm.
thousands and hundreds of thousands of people who are all basically, yeah, anecdotal, testimonial. I don't care what you want to call it. It doesn't matter. Listen and learn and jump in and try it for yourself. So that's really my
It's so '09 was when you found the group that got you moving forward. And how did you feel? And were you did you go straight carnivore right away, or how did you do that? Because that was like so radical. And what were people thinking around you?
It was really radical. And I actually, at the time, was married and had kids that were about 12 and 14. I actually did it for 2 weeks with nobody even noticing. And because, I would, when I would make meals, I would grill, pork chops and sausage, and then I would make rice maybe for them and maybe some vegetable, right? Because that's what's normal and that's what you should do. And then I was just not eating the rice and the veggie. And, I think they were used to me doing the no bread thing that I had done leading up to this. I had gone pretty much, I was attempting to go sugar free, flour
Mhm.
free. And at that point, the moment I did that, within 2 weeks, I used to have, like, I'll say adult cystic acne, like along my jawline, down my neck. And if you go onto my Instagram page, pretty early, I started it about 2.5 years ago, but there's not that many posts there. But you can see I have the before and after from 2 weeks difference of just the sugar and the flour. And I said, wow, this is powerful. So I had already been a little bit in that low carb world, but still having an issue with my whole eating disorder thing. So it became evident, like, once I hit this group and was learning that this is serious. I got to draw the line and just not have any of that stuff anymore. And if I really truly am seeking health, I have to take this seriously. And yeah, so eventually, it came out to the whole family thing. Like, yeah, I'm just eating meat and eggs, and nope, yeah, it wasn't. Nobody was in agreement, because my kids would come home from school at like maybe I was about a year into it, and then my
Uh-huh.
son came home from health class. PE gym class has health, and he was serious. He goes, "Mom, do you know what you're doing? You're supposed to eat lean meat and lots of fruits and vegetables. What are you doing?" Like, he was like, the teachers are God and mom doesn't know what the heck she's doing this, and it's so difficult. And my husband at the time was all about everything in moderation. And the point was, is that I can't moderate. And that aside from that part of it, for everybody, not that anybody else had the path that I had coming into it, but for everybody, sugar's inflammatory, grains, gluten, nuts, seeds, inflammatory. They're not intended for our body. So, I got to the point where I was not going to push the way I ate on anybody else. And it was a difficult path. It was very difficult, because I was at the point where there was still mac and cheese and pizza and cereal and ice cream in the freezer, the typical Breyers, in the
Right,
freezer
right,
stuff.
right.
And
Very difficult.
yeah, and so I have to say, and I talk about this with people I coach, both privately and in groups, I say, look, you have to understand that this is, if you're in a serious situation where you cannot control this, which I find anybody who's been in this uh, journey like where I have, it is so very difficult to be in front of it and have it around. And you have to figure out ways. You have to either put everything into one, cabinet, and that's where that stuff stays. And, you have to be so steadfast. And it's not easy because, and I have this famous phrase, it's like, we're flying our freak flag, like you go out to a party and people are like, wow, you look, it might be, you look great. What are you doing? And then when you're talking about it, you realize nobody wants to hear that. Everybody wants to indulge. They're eating, they're drinking, they're having fun, and they're like, really? No vegetables? Well, it might be fine now, but wait till you have a heart attack in 5 years. And then it's like, blah, blah, blah. You get all these naysayers, whether it's coworkers, friends, family, you get it. You get bombarded by it. So you have to have a thick skin, and you also have
Mhm.
to learn to just zip it up because nobody really cares unless they really care. And then you can pick that up. If they really care, come on at me. I'm so happy to share any past experience I have with this. And I've had very great you know situations with that happening, but for the most part, yeah, everybody has to, you have to come to this with your own why that makes you cry, or everybody just thinks you're crazy. So